Hare Krishna, welcome to our Bhakti Yoga Enlightenment Program. It's March 21st, 2021, and we're studying from Bhagavad Gita, chapter 10, entitled The Opulence of the Absolute, text 11. And we have the verse on the board here for anyone who's interested. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya.
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 Hare Krishna. So I first read Bhagavad Gita as it is cover to cover in the summer of 1983. I was backpacking around Europe and I stopped at a Bhakti Yoga ashram outside of Florence, Italy. Was there for about 2 weeks and I read Bhagavad Gita as it is cover to cover. It ruined my life. So I wanted to share with you. That's the sharing spirit. I mean, like I had life plans and then this presented a philosophy that was so satisfying to my intelligence, and not just a philosophy that I realized like, oh, this isn't just like some book I read, but like, because it not just provides a philosophy, it provided a process we can follow, a lifestyle we can follow to experience the philosophy, to experience the truths. And so I thought, well, if I consider myself an honest person, I owe it to myself to give myself to the process, to at least give an experiment. So it's 38 years later, I'm still doing the experiment and I'm satisfied with the results. And that's why certainly one of the things I love most to do is to share and discuss this philosophy of Bhagavad Gita. So we can start with the Sanskrit words responsively. Tesham Eva Anukampa Artam Aham Agyanajam Tama Nashayami Atma Bhavasta Jnana Dipena Basvata. Okay. So now we'll chant one line at a time responsively. Tesham evanu kampartam aham agyanajam tamaha nishayam yatma bhavasto jnanadipena basvata. Tesham evanu kampartam aham agyanajam tamaha nishayam yatma bhavasto jnanadipena basvata. Tesham evanu kampartam aham agyanajam tamaha nishayam yatma bhavasto jnanadipena basvata.
Tesham evanu kampartam
Tesham evanu kampartam
aham agyanajam tamaha
aham agyanajam tamaha
nasyami atma bhavasto
nishayam yatma bhavasto jnanadipena basvata.
Tesham Partatam
Tesham evanu kampartam
Ahamajanajam Tamaha
aham agyanajam tamaha
Asayami Yatma Bhagasto
nishayam yatma bhavasto
Jnanadipena Vasvasam.
Jnanadipena Basvata. Teshamevanu Kampartam. Ahamajnana Jam Tamaha. Nishayam Yatma Bhavasto. Teshamevanu Kampartam. Ahamajnana Jam Tamaha. Nishayam Yatma Bhavasto. Jnanadipena Basvata.
Teshamevanu Kampartam.
Teshamevanu Kampartam. Ahamajnana Jam Tamaha.
Nishami Atma Bhavastu.
Nishayam Yatma Bhavasto.
Jnanadipena Basvata.
Jnanadipena Basvata. Teshamevanu Kampartam. Ahamajnana Jam Tamaha. Nishayam Yatma Basvato. Jnanadipena Basvata. Teshamevanu Kampartam. Ahamajnana Jam Tamaha. Nishayam Yatma Bhavasto. Jnanadipena Basvata. Would anyone online like to recite the verse? Okay, so we'll go to the word for word responsively. Tesham, for them. Eva, certainly. Anukampa Artam, to show special mercy. Aham, I. Ajnanajam, due to ignorance. Tama, darkness. Nishayayami, dispel. Atma, within. Bhavasta, themselves. Jnana, of knowledge. Dipena, with the lamp. Basvata, glowing. Okay, translation. Out of compassion for them, I, dwelling in their hearts, destroy with the shining lamp of knowledge the darkness born of ignorance. Purport by A.C. Bhaktivedanta Swami Prabhupada. When Lord Chaitanya was in Benares, promulgating the chanting of Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare, thousands of people were following him. Prakashananda, a very influential and learned scholar in Benares at that time, derided Lord Chaitanya for being a sentimentalist. Sometimes philosophers criticize the devotees because they think that most of the devotees are in the darkness of ignorance and are philosophically naive sentimentalists. Actually, that is not the fact. There are very, very learned scholars who have put forward the philosophy of devotion, but even if a devotee does not take advantage of their literatures or of his spiritual master, if he is sincere in his devotional service, he is helped by Krishna himself within his heart. So the sincere devotee engaged in Krishna consciousness cannot be without knowledge. The only qualification is that one carry out devotional service in full Krishna consciousness. The modern philosophers think that without discriminating, one cannot have pure knowledge. For them, this answer is given by the Supreme Lord. Those who are engaged in pure devotional service, even though they be without Sufficient education and even without sufficient knowledge of the Vedic principles are still helped by the Supreme God, as stated in this verse. The Lord tells Arjuna that basically there is no possibility of understanding the supreme truth, the absolute truth, the supreme personality of Godhead simply by speculating, for the supreme truth is so great that it is not possible to understand him or to achieve him simply by making a mental effort. Man can go on speculating for several millions of years, and if he is not devoted, if he is not a lover of the supreme truth, he will never understand Krishna or the supreme truth. Only by devotional service is the supreme truth, Krishna, pleased. And by his inconceivable energy, he can reveal himself to the heart of the pure devotee. The pure devotee always has Krishna within his heart. Therefore, he is just like the sun that dissipates the darkness of ignorance. This is the special mercy rendered to the pure devotee of Krishna. Due to the contamination of material association through many, many millions of births, one's heart is always covered with the dust of materialism. But when one engages in devotional service and constantly chants Hare Krishna, the dust quickly clears, and one is elevated to the platform of pure knowledge. The ultimate goal of Vishnu can be attained only by this chant and by devotional service, and not by mental speculation or argument. The pure devotee does not have to worry about the necessities of life. He need not be anxious, because when he removes the darkness from his heart, everything is provided automatically by the Supreme Lord, for he is pleased by the loving devotional service of the devotee. This is the essence of the Gita's teachings. By studying Bhagavad Gita, one can become a completely surrendered soul to the Supreme Lord and engage himself in pure devotional service. As the Lord takes charge, one becomes completely free from all kinds of materialistic endeavors. Om Gyanatirmirandasya Gyananjana Shalakaya Chakshurinmilitam Yena Tasmai Shri Gurave Namaha Shri Chaitanya Manobishtam Stapitam Yena Bhutale Svayam Rupa Kadamayam Darati Sva Padantikam Vandeham Shri Guru Shri Uttapadakamalam Shri Gurun Vaishnavamscha Shri Rupam Sagrajatam Sagana Raganatan Vitam Tam Sajivam Sadvaitam Savadutam Parijana Sahitan Krishna Chaitanya Devam Shri Radha Krishna Padan Sagana Lalita Shri Vishakan Vitamscha Hey Krishna Karuna Sindhu Dina Bandhu Jagatpate Gopisha Gopika Kanta Radha Kanta Namostute Tapta Kancana Garange Radhe Vrindavaneshvare Vrishabhanu Sute Devi Pranamami Hare Priye Vanchakalpatayubhyascha Kripa Sindhubhyevacha Patitanan Pavanebhyo Vaishnavebhyo Namo Namaha Jai Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadhar Shri Vasadi Gaura Bhakta Vrinda Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Namo Om Vishnu Padaya, Krishna Prestaya Bhutale, Srimate Bhaktivedanta, Swami Niti Namine. Namaste, Sarasvati Devi, Gauravani Pacharine, Nirvishesha Shunyavadi Paschatya Desha Tarine. Teshamevanu kampartam aham gyanajam tamahan ashayam yatma bhavasto gyanadipena basvata. Out of compassion for them, I, dwelling in their hearts, destroy with the shining lamp of knowledge the darkness born of ignorance. Hare Krishna. Okay, just before the program, I was in my office speaking with Stephanie about coaching. And we have many here who've experienced our coach program. Casey's in our coaching excellence program. So I was talking with Stephanie. You've heard me say a lot. all the coaching skills, techniques. We have a whole school of coaching, many courses, and it's all about this verse. It's all about supporting people, starting with ourselves, to connect with the highest guidance within. That's what all the techniques, methods, reflective listening, open-ended questions, be, do, have, supporting people to connect with the highest guidance within. Different terms are used, could call it super consciousness, call it God in the heart, super soul, higher intelligence. All those terms are accurate. Krishna says at the end of the 3rd chapter of Bhagavad Gita, Evam Bude Prambudva Samstapyat Manumaratmana Jahi Shatru Mahabaho Kamarupam Darasadam. He encourages Arjuna and us to control the lower self with the higher self by connecting with that higher, by following higher spiritual intelligence. And so this is important because nothing can possibly be more important. So that's pretty important. Yeah, so okay, according to ancient wisdom traditions, like Bhagavad Gita, the purpose of human life is to inquire about the absolute truth, is to inquire about who am I? Who am I? These important questions. We can, if we want to deconstruct it and reduce it, we'll find that the essential activities common to all animals are eating, sleeping, mating, and defending. Okay, and if we look at, I'm going to say, maybe 99.99% of human beings or more, that's pretty much all we do. Maybe in glorified form. Well, I don't just eat. I go to a fancy restaurant to eat. Well, I'm not involved in matings like dog. I go to a fancy penthouse and we do our mating there. Okay. Well, I'm not defending like a tiger. I defend with paying my taxes for thermonuclear devices. It's essentially the same activity in sophisticated ways. I defend with clever defense mechanisms like projection and rationalization and denial. Essentially, it's the tiger trying to scratch its opponent's eyes out.
Looking good.
Yeah, looking good strategies. Like, okay, so Bhagavad Gita doesn't suggest that we deny or neglect our eating, sleeping, mating, and defending. At the same time, it's described in the Bhagavatam, Kamasya Nendriya Pritir Nabu Jivete Labhata. Jivasya Takta Jigyasa Nartayasche Karma Bhi. That in human life, what's recommended to achieve the most sublime purpose of human life, what's recommended is that, yeah, we keep body and soul together in a healthy way, be healthy, physically healthy. And human life is especially meant for inquiry into the absolute truth. And nothing else should really be the goal of one's works. When I say absolute can be a triggering word because we can sometimes distract. But everything's relative. There are no absolutes. Are you sure? Yeah. Are you absolutely sure? And then it kind of falls apart there. So absolute simply means that which is true in all time and space. So I can say, I'm David Wolf. Recently, I turned 60 years old. I'm from Philadelphia, Pennsylvania. Okay, so that's a relative truth. Was I David Wolf from Philadelphia, Pennsylvania 100,000 years ago? Will I be David Wolf 100 million years from now? No. Okay, so it's a relative truth. So this verse, this whole book, it points to truth that is good in all time and space. And so there are some distinctions here. Like knowledge is power. Knowledge or intellect means the capacity to make distinctions, right? In any field, the more whether it's a sport, an art, or engineering, or medicine, or playing guitar, right? So you can give me the guitar, but no one's going to want to hear me play guitar. Why? Because David Wolf doesn't make distinctions. Just like, whatever, hold it this way or that way, doesn't matter. No, it does matter. Okay. So, right. So some basic distinctions here. One, the distinction between matter and spirit. Okay. A quick thought exercise we often do. And we'll do it now. Imagine you're looking at a photograph of yourself from when you were 5 years old. So you look at that photo. Do you say, who is this stranger? Who is this person? No. I say, that's David when I was 5. That's Alex when I was 5. That's Casey when I was 5. That's Len. Now, we know from science, right? There's not one chemical, not one atom, not one molecule in the body now that was there in the 5-year-old body. You can say, well, the body grew. No, it didn't. No, it's not like the atoms got bigger. No, it completely changed. Still, there's some constant identity that I call David, you call Laura, you call Anne. That indicates logically that our identity, this person I call David, is nothing physical, nothing material. Right. Back in 2014, I was in a place called Golden, Colorado, and I was giving a presentation. It was at a hospital, it was at a veterans hospital. And so the audience was mostly doctors, nurses, and medical professionals, some psychiatrists, some social workers. And I started the presentation and I said, imagine that someone comes to you and says, I've hurt my finger. Now, in that simple phrase, my finger, there are two entities. There's the finger and the owner of the finger. So I asked the doctors, nurses, who are you treating? Are you treating the finger or the owner of the finger? So they sat there kind of stunned. The director of the hospital was there. And he said, well, David, that's a simple question. But we've never really thought about it. And I went on and I said, well, it's an important question because the finger is made of the same stuff as this table or the tires on the car. It's dead matter. There's no healing potency in the finger. The healing potency is in that atomic unit of sentience that animates the body. Okay. So this indicates, yes, so we're not the body. We're the owner of the finger. We're not the car. We're the driver of the car. It's very important. Just like an analogy means something that's easy to understand helps me to understand something that's more difficult to understand. So like I can understand if I'm driving in a Toyota, that doesn't make me Japanese. If the next day I get into a Volkswagen, doesn't mean I'm German. If the next day I get into a Chevrolet, do they still make Chevrolets? I don't know. Anyhow, if I get into a Chevrolet, now I'm an American. No, that's just the car. That's just the car. So there's caring for, nurturing the car. We know how to care for the car. What's it mean to nurture the driver of the car? Similarly, we spend so much energy taking care of our eating, sleeping, mating, and defending. Okay, we don't want to neglect the car. We spend so much energy. What's it mean? What's it mean to nurture, to care for that irreducible quantum of consciousness that inhabits the body, the spiritual driver of the car? So the science of that's given in Bhagavad Gita. So important because let's say if I'm driving a car and I got the car washed 4 times this week and I changed the oil, I put the gas in and whatever else people do to take care of cars, I don't know, but whatever they do, okay, but then you can, but David, it looks like you haven't you haven't eaten in like a week and you haven't had like a cup of water in a few days. And so you haven't had a bath or a shower in a month. No, but I just got the carburetor cleaned. Well, it's good you're taking care of your car, but like you're neglecting the important part. The more important, just like if we hear there was a car crash, do we immediately say, oh, is the car okay? I hope it's not total. It's not in the junkyard, is it? No, we say, did anyone get hurt? Was anyone injured? Did anyone die? Because we know the car has some importance, but it's very secondary or tertiary. The driver of the car is a lot more important. Okay, so similarly, the spirit, soul, that inhabits the body, a lot more important. So what's it mean to nurture the soul? That's what this book is about. That's what this book is about. So there's a distinction between spirit and matter, and distinction between spirit and supreme spirit. Okay, so the goal here is not, okay, so when I become enlightened, I'll realize that I'm God. There are some philosophies that go in that direction, but just in the very statement, we should realize some contradiction, right? Well, one thing, if I'm God, the omnipotent, omnipresent, omnipotent personality of Godhead, how come at least 3 or 4 times per week I'm not able to find my eyeglasses? No, this is a profound question. No, really. Yeah. No. If I'm God, the controller of the moon and the sun and everything, how come it's so difficult to locate my car keys and remember which drawer I put them in? No, it's a sublime question, really. Okay, so yeah. So the idea is, if I just meditate enough, I'll realize that I'm God. So how did God fall into forgetfulness? It means the power of illusion, the power of forgetfulness is more powerful than God. So therefore illusion is God. Gets in all sorts of contradiction. So here, this is about realizing I am not matter. I do matter as a spirit soul, but I am not the material body. I am spirit soul, and realizing my eternal nature as servant of God. That's the bliss of the soul. Servants of God. That's the bliss of the soul. This is the science of how to realize that practically in life, very practically in life. So, Kamasya Nandriya Pritya Nabo Jive Talavata, Jivasya Tattva Jigyasa. This is what these sorts of explorations, discussions, just earlier, Marie was leaving us basically enchanting the names of the divine. So that's described right here in the first sentence of this purport. When Lord Chaitanya was in Benares promulgating the chanting of Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare, thousands of people were following him. So it's described in this ancient wisdom tradition called the Vedas. Idi Shodashakam Nam Nam Kalikamasanasanam, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. It's just the most recommended process for self-realization, to realize who we are as the driver of the car and to stop misidentifying ourselves as the car, to get, not just intellectually, but to experientially get that by filling the car with gas, my thirst is not satisfied. Okay. By washing the roof of the car, I am not clean. To get that I am spirit soul. And this is so important, because the nature of the spirit soul is bliss, eternity, consciousness, and bliss, and radiance, and vibrance, and power, and love. All those qualities that everyone's seeking. That's Saint Francis said, we are searching for what is searching. Right? It means we're searching externally for that which is an intrinsic quality of the soul. How to bring out, how to unlock those natural qualities of the soul, that's called bhakti. And that's described here. That's called by the soul stopping to identify as the vehicle, realizing that my eternal nature is to serve the supreme soul, the supreme personality of Godhead, with love and devotion. Then our bliss naturally expands and deepens unlimitedly. And through engaging, so bhakti means loving devotional service to God. Okay. This mantra, Hare Krishna Maha Mantra, it's 16 words. Really, it's composed of 3 words in a 16-word mantra. It's composed of 3 words. They're each names of the divine. We sometimes people relate with the term God, sometimes divine, ultimate, absolute, okay? Super consciousness, super soul, whatever term we want to use. Hare indicates the feminine essence of the divine. Krishna means all attractive. We all have some attractive potency. We're attracted to others with attractive potency. So who is the reservoir of all attractiveness? God. So Krishna is a name for God. That means all attractive. And to the extent that we give our lives to serving God, Krishna, with love and devotion, then we become effulgent. Our attractive potency becomes radiant more and more. And we don't sink into depression or debilitating anxiety. Our natural bliss is steadily manifest. Also, we all have attractive potency. We're all seeking pleasure. And that's not bad or wrong. It's natural. Ananda Mayobhyasa, the nature of the living entity is to seek pleasure, to seek bliss, to seek happiness. That's our nature. The problem is that we tend to seek pleasure, satisfaction, happiness, gratification in ways and places that either immediately or down the road are more a source of misery than happiness. Down the road can mean 10 years later. It can mean 10 minutes later, or it can mean the next morning. Oh, why did I do that? Oh my God. Okay, so that seeking happiness in ways that become a source of misery. I'm not even going to ask for a raise of hands. I just trust we could all make long lists about, oh yeah, and there was another time. So it's described. Yehi sam sparshaja boga dukkha yonaya evate, adyantavanta konte nate shuramate Buddha. That a wise person does not seek happiness in the sources of the senses with the sense objects. Why? Because such pleasures have a beginning and an end, and they won't satisfy me because I'm an eternal being. I'll only be fulfilled and blissful with pleasure that is ever increasing, not that has a beginning. There's no joy in gratifications of the car that have a beginning and an end. There's just no joy there. There's no joy in dead matter. There's no joy. The joy is in the soul awakening to itself as a servant of the Supreme. That's the joy. That's the joy. Just as an, okay, like there's a term, like a fish out of water. So if we take a fish out of water, and let's say the fish has, we give the fish a 10,000 square foot home, paid off, no mortgage, with servants, and the fish has a bank account of like tens of millions, and the fish has a high status position in company or government, and the fish has a gorgeous spouse fish. What will the fish do? The fish will flop and die. The fish will flop and suffer and die. And then we can say, oh, but fish, here's a retirement fund in your name. The fish will flop and die and suffer in agony because the fish is out of water. Yeah, well, this is, good. If we don't laugh, we'll cry. So both responses are completely valid from my point of view. Tears and laughter. Tears and laughter. So, because again, it's another, but we, in these analogies, in this imagery, we want to see ourselves. We want to see ourselves. Okay. And humor can be a great impetus to get urgent about what's important in life. And also tears and pain can be a great impetus. So the whole range of emotion. So the fish's home is in water. Our home is eternity. Our home is eternity. As long as so the nature of the material mind, it will drag us to that which is impermanent. Okay, it's described in the Bhagavad Gita. Bandurat matmanastasya yanamana jivta anatmanastu shatrutve vartatatmeva satruvat. That describes that our mind can be our best friend or our worst enemy. Okay. If you've ever experienced your own mind as your worst enemy, raise your hand. Okay. Probably most of us. Okay, so the material mind. Now we can train our mind to be our best friend when our minds, the thoughts and emotions related to the mind, support us in self-realization. Then our minds are and God consciousness. But that takes training. That takes training. So it's just in the second chapter of this book, Bhagavad Gita, the term is used, regulated principles of freedom, meaning that there are some lifestyle habits. It's not about you should, you shouldn't, thou shalt not, sin. It's about, there's some habits we can cultivate that support us to realize who we are, a spirit soul. And there are other life habits that'll tend to alienate ourselves from ourselves more and more and become lost to ourselves more and more. And think about being lost to ourselves. We go down that spiral and we don't even know we're lost to ourselves. We can go a whole day, a whole year, 10 years, 20 years. If we don't laugh, we'll cry. So just like to realize the nuances of this philosophy, to realize the nuances requires a peaceful environment within. So let's just take something practical like eating. Everyone eats, everyone likes to eat. Okay, so like if we're eating the results of gross violence, right, that requires a slaughtering an animal, the animal screaming in agony, taking the calf from its mother, just because some bumps in our tongue tell us we like the taste of flesh and blood. If we're eating the result of gross violence, we not even getting into ethics or right or wrong or good or bad. It's just not going to be helpful to create that peaceful inner environment to differentiate between matter and spirit, between soul and super soul. It's just, what to speak of basic karmic reactions that we're causing that violence. That violence that means some living entities going to be hurting my body for their pleasure tomorrow, or maybe next lifetime or whatever. So there's regulative principles of freedom. A basic regulative principle is chanting the names of God, like in the form of this Hare Krishna Maha Mantra. The idea is we're already immersed in layers and layers of illusion and delusion. And so let's say if we go, okay, well, to come out of illusion and to get real clear-minded, let's smoke a joint. That should work. Works every time. Or let me take a hit of this or a hit of... So again, it's not about right, wrong, good, bad. It's just that if we want to progress in spiritual realization, there are certain regulative principles like staying away from intoxication, vegetarian prasadam diet that are helpful. And then as we engage in this process of bhakti, then knowledge is revealed more and more. Realized knowledge. Vasudevi Bhagavati Bhakti Yoga Projita Janiyat Yashuvargam Gyanam Shad Hetukam. We engage in devotional service, bhakti, following the regulative principles of freedom. then knowledge comes automatically. And beautifully, we get the higher taste of the soul awakening to itself. And then the lower tastes that get us in trouble, look, they just fade away. We lose our attraction for them without like banging our head against the wall or something like that. They just fade away. They just fade away. And the example is given like if a child is being destructive, we can tell the child, just sit in the corner, time out, do nothing. So the child can sit and do nothing. Maybe for 5 seconds, 10 seconds if it's a really patient child. But then the child just needs to like destroy things again. So more intelligent parenting, childcare. Instead of telling the child, just sit there, do nothing. Give the child something that's constructive, healthy, life enriching, that's more fun than the destructive thing. Then the child forgets about the destructive thing. So our senses and mind are like children. So this process of bhakti yoga, it's not a process of elimination. It's not a process of don't do that, don't do that, don't do that. It's a process of transformation. It's like, okay, we were singing. Well, singing is material. No, if we're singing names of God, then that's singing that inspires the self to turn towards itself in self-realization, inspires the self to turn towards God in an attitude of devotion. That's spiritual singing. That's not singing that immerses us deeper into alienation from the self. So whether it's our relationship with money, our relationship with family members, whether it's our work, our play, everything gets to be dovetailed in this process of bhakti. And that's why it's a very world embracing spiritual process. It's not a world rejecting spiritual process, a very world embracing. And it's a science. It's a science. So it's not about giving anything up. It is about learning the art and science of how to integrate my eating, my sleeping, my relationships, my communication, my finances, my career, integrate everything in the process of bhakti, and then gradually the bliss of the soul awakens. Now, this verse reads, Tesham evano kampartam aham agyanajam tamahan ashayam yatma bhavasto ganadipena basvata. Out of compassion for them, I, dwelling in their hearts, destroy with the shining lamp of knowledge the darkness born of ignorance. I thank you for your presence, listening, and attention. I welcome at this time if anyone would like to share any comments or realizations or ask any questions, just to give context. Okay, there's about a dozen of us here in person, and online we've got about 8, including Damodar there in Germany. Hey, Damodar. Hare Krishna. And so there's about 8 of us online, so we've got about 20 of us all together. Thanks. So we are in this moment achieving the purpose of human life. Yeah. So let's keep that going. Any questions or comments? Len?
You used the phrase material mind.
Yeah.
So, as I understand, mind, intelligence, and false egos, and the distinctions between those 3 things, which I label consciousness, and then eternal soul, which is different, which is also consciousness. But so I guess I'm not 100% clear, because I'm thinking like, well, okay, the mind is the mind. If you say material mind, then you're just talking about the 5 senses, pretty much.
Okay.
Because that I can see as material, but consciousness is not material. So consciousness is not part of mind, it's part of intelligence and false ego. Right?
Okay. Yeah, your question goes to a few interesting places. So thanks for your question. So thanks for that. So I don't know if I'll respond to exactly what you're asking, but you might not be exactly clear what you're asking either, but
I'm not.
I appreciate the direction. Okay. So Bhagavad Gita describes Bhumira pona lovayu kamanam buddha evacha ahankara mitya me bina prakritya astada describes there's 8 constituents of material energy. 5, what's called gross matter, earth, water, fire, air, ether. And 3 elements that are subtle matter, mind, intellect, and ahankara, or false ego. Okay? So as an example, we have we gave the example of the vehicle and the driver. So here's the example, it's a bit more nuanced. We have the hardware of the computer and the software. So the hardware is like earth, water, fire, air, ether, and the software relates to mind, intelligence, and false ego. So I'm not the hardware and I'm not the software. I'm the operator of the computer. And my existence is not dependent on the hardware or software. Yes, I can manifest my consciousness through the hardware and the software. Okay, just like someone could say that the tungsten, I don't know what light bulbs are made of, like tungsten is what I learned. So whatever chemicals there in the light, okay, the tungsten produces the electricity, but that's not true. Electricity exists apart from the contraption of the light bulb, and electricity can flow through the tungsten and the filament, right? The electricity can flow through. But the existence of electricity is not dependent on the light bulb contraption. So similarly, we are conscious and we are consciousness. Just like light is illuminating and it is light. So the spirit soul is consciousness. It's made of consciousness. And the spirit soul can manifest its consciousness through the material mind, intellect, false ego, and through the material hands. And the spirit soul and the consciousness that is the spirit soul is not in any way dependent. The existence of the consciousness is not dependent on any material contraption. So mind and intellect and false ego, they're closer to the soul than like the earth, water, the hands and legs, but they're still not the soul. They're the subtle material casing. Now, yeah, so mind, mana, the English word mind comes from the Sanskrit mana. The first word of mantra is man, like mind, mantra. Tra means sound vibration that liberates the mind from material illusion and returns the self to itself in self-realization. And so we can spiritualize our mind, just like we can, like we talked about a computer made of material elements. This computer though is spiritual. Why? Because we're using this computer to discuss Bhagavad Gita. So we can spiritualize our mind by thinking of Krishna, by using the mind and intellect to discuss transcendental philosophy. Then the material energy becomes spiritual. Is money spiritual or material? What's the consciousness behind the utilization? Is the car spiritual or material? What's the consciousness behind the utilization? Similarly, so generally, so for most, if not all of us, we're in a body and our mind is material, meaning that we've trained our mind over many lifetimes to drag us further and further into the illusion that I am this body and I'll be satisfied and fulfilled by fulfilling the senses of the body. The material mind will take us to that which is impermanent. And through this yoga, bhakti yoga, yoga is a Sanskrit word that means to connect, to link. Like the English word yoke comes from the Sanskrit yoga. So yoga is not essentially about some physical exercises. It wouldn't matter how much you paid me. I would not be able to sit in a lotus position. Yet, I am speaking about yoga. So the essence of yoga, yoga in its essential sense means the self connecting with itself and connecting with God in a spirit of devotion. So let's say if someone's doing farming, agriculture, and in their connection with earth, they're coming closer to self and God. That's yoga. It would be called karma yoga. If someone's praying to Jesus with love and devotion and they're coming closer to God, that's yoga. Okay. So bhakti yoga, it's yoga of love and devotion, which is the nature of the soul. And by engaging the mind in bhakti, we transform the mind from our material worst enemy to our spiritual best friend. Thanks for your question, Len. I appreciate it.
Thanks for that long answer.
Thank you. Any other questions or comments? Stephanie.
I have a simple question,
Okay.
simple sounding. I feel like I've also asked this multiple times in the past. So it's saying that we don't need to learn philosophy and
Yeah.
practice, like have full knowledge and practice of the Vedas and whatnot, but that purely by being engaged in pure devotional service,
Yeah.
One's heart is liberated from illusion. So in that, what you could please define what it means to be carrying out pure devotional service
Okay.
and full Krishna consciousness.
Okay. All right. Thanks for your question, Stephanie. Yeah. It's simple and there's and it's deep and there's a lot of nuances there. So Hare Krishna, sir.
Long time no see.
Is this your first program?
Yeah, I'm totally new to
Okay,
this thing.
this is called the Hare Krishna Maha Mantra. Just okay. All right. Just make yourself at home and okay.
Thank you.
Good. Okay. So
And that's your father.
so it's a good I like your question, Stephanie, because we can say the past hour we're studying philosophy and then the purport's about no need to study philosophy. So like it's described like Gopi Bharti Padakamalira Dasa Dasa Nudas. The greatest devotees of Krishna are called the gopis. You've probably heard of the gopis. Okay, so we don't hear about them studying philosophy. Same with the cowherd boys. We don't hear about them reciting verses or studying philosophy. And yet they're the highest devotees. Lord Chaitanya was the greatest scholar of his time. He was following in the mode of the gopis. So it's described in Bhagavad Gita, Vedeshta Savera Hame Vedu, Vedantakrit Vedavit Evachaham. The goal of all Vedas, the goal of all philosophy is to come to this pure devotional service. So if one is actually 100% engaged in loving devotional service to God, then they've achieved the goal of philosophy. Philosophy means a genuine search for truth. They're realizing themselves as spirit soul, and then the function of the soul in full enlightenment is to serve God with love and devotion. Okay, so in a sense, if we're there, no need to study philosophy. Okay, still, even those who are there, like A.C. Bhaktivedanta Swami or all the acharyas on our altar, they give us profound philosophy anyway. Our line is immensely literate, hundreds and hundreds of philosophy books. We have, Prabhupada gave us dozens and dozens of philosophy books. So Prabhupada, for himself, he doesn't need philosophy. He's living the goal of philosophy. So then we talked about distinctions earlier. So that right now, my spontaneous attraction is not to serve Krishna with love and devotion. My spontaneous attraction is in illusion, to serve my senses, to sleep, to eat, to waste time on internet. So that's why we spend time in discussions like this to strengthen our intelligence, to make distinctions, to create regulative principles. We study philosophy to understand the futility of trying to be truly happy in material, in life, to understand the nature of the self, to make distinctions so that I gradually train my mind and intellect to become more attracted to the goal of life, self-realization and devotional service. And so if we try to give up philosophy and we're not on that platform of the residents of Goloka Vrindavan, then we will become more and more foolish, more and more entangled in attempts at material sense gratification, more and more entangled in envy, lust, greed. So now, in the devotional mood, yeah, we study these philosophy books and we endeavor to study them in a mood of devotion, not just to acquire knowledge. Like a materialist might, I acquire cars. How many Mercedes-Benz cars do you have? I acquire bank accounts, So a subtle form of materialism is I acquire knowledge. Okay, oh, I know this, I know that. So, see, in reading Prabhupada's books, it's the most sublime, perfect philosophy you'll find. You can say, well, that's a dogmatic statement, David Wolf. You don't need to accept what David Wolf says. Apply your intelligence, apply your logic. If you find something higher, more consistent, more sound, I will no longer give Gita presentations and I'll follow whatever you found. It's a challenge. If you don't find something higher, then apply your intelligence and heart here. Okay. So my experience over 60 years is that, yeah, this is by far just the most rationally consistent philosophy, internally consistent, describing the world as it is and giving a process for self-realization. And so whatever I understand or not, and as the years go on, I do understand more and more. It's like that. But, and also I get more and more awareness of how much I don't understand. I mean, that's there too. But whatever I understand or not, each vibration is purifying. See, that's what absolute means. Absolute means that each sentence is revealing an absolute truth. We talked about absolute earlier, that which is true in all time and space. But not just each truth reveals an absolute truth. Not just each sentence. Each sentence, each word, each syllable is non-different from the truth that it reveals. That's why, whether we understand it or not, by being in kirtan, by hearing Bhagavad Gita, Sanskrit or English, our hearts transformed, even if we might resist some of what it says. I don't agree with that. And doubts are encouraged. The whole Bhagavad Gita is driven by Arjuna expressing his doubts. Blind following is discouraged here. We want an intelligence that's deeply convinced. So each sentence, each verse, each paragraph, each syllable is identical with the truth that it reveals. And that's why the soul, exposed to this vibration, awakens to its original nature, apart from philosophical understanding. So in terms of philosophical understanding, to help us make good decisions day to day, to help us make good decisions, we want a sharp, philosophical, acute intellect so that we make decisions day to day, moment to moment, that truly support us in achieving the highest goal of human life. Now, if we've come to the point where the soul's just so full of devotion for Krishna spontaneously, I have no attraction to have anyone adore me, no attraction for fame, no attraction for profit, no attraction for material sense gratification, no attraction for nonsense of any sort, and I'm just serving Krishna in the spirit of the cowherd boys and the gopis, then I've achieved the goal of philosophy. I don't need to study philosophy, but then such a soul enters into Bhagavad Gita anyway, because it's so much nectar. Like I'm not at all there. At the same time, I can say, I don't know, maybe this verse, maybe this is about the 50th time I've read this verse in purport. I read all of Prabhupada's books over and over again, all of his 55 major books. I'm about on my 8th cycle. Plus we have classes like this and like that. Okay, and so I can say, I got new realizations. That's the distinction, material and spiritual. Material is the law of diminishing returns. Spiritual, I'm getting new realizations philosophically, emotionally, spiritually. By reading this, the more I read it, the fresher it is. That's spiritual vibration. I appreciate your question.
Thank you.
Thank you, Steph. Damayanti.
I like the question, Stephanie. And I was wondering, just like day to day, like practical, like I was just wanting to hear about like practically what would pure devotion look like day to day, like right when I wake up to go to sleep. What would pure devotion look like in the material world on there?
Okay. Hare Krishna. I see some chat. Just want to check on the chat. Okay, got it. All right, thank you. Malini and Ramachandra.
Ramachandra there?
Ramachandra's here, yeah. He's in Mexico. Okay, all right. So, all right. Well, I don't know what it would look like as someone who's there. But that's why, okay, what it would look like is we're serving the mission of the pure devotees. We're serving the mission constantly. So that's why I say, we're doing it. We're doing pure devotional service right now. Okay. You know, we might have stuff going on, but this is what it looks like. Mat chitta mat gita pranam bodhiyantas praspram katyantas chamam nityam tashanti charumanticha. Krishna says, pure devote, it looks like sincere souls getting together and talking about God and talking about spiritual philosophy. So that's what we're doing here for an hour, 45 minutes or so. And so, okay, so I don't know what, pure devotion is, but like, okay, so Srila Prabhupada, he's our current link to the chain of pure spiritual teachers, starting with Krishna. And he gives us, he recommends we wake up by 4 a.m. So say 4 or 4:30, like that. And at 5, we start some spiritual program. So a strong morning program. Martin Luther, from the Middle Ages, who started the Reformation, he started Reformation, so quite a historical figure. He wrote like more than 200 books. He accomplished so much. He was once asked, how do you accomplish so much? And he responded, if I didn't pray to God at least 3 hours every morning, I wouldn't have time for everything else. So I get that to some extent. So strong morning program, sadhana bhakti. And we say, yeah, but how can I know what sort of morning program? Prabhupada gives us guidelines. It involves reading transcendental literature, kirtan, chanting Hare Krishna Maha Mantra. The next part of our program will experience chanting Hare Krishna Maha Mantra in the form of japa. Then we'll have kirtan again. Pure devotion looks like eating only prasadam in the realm of eating. It means not just thanking God for our food, but before we eat, preparing the food and offering the food with love and devotion to God. Pure devotion looks like, oh, I think I'll take a nap, even though I don't need to sleep, or I think I'll go to the refrigerator, even if I don't need. Instead of that, I think I'll just surf here on the internet, here and there. Instead of any of that, let me take 20 minutes away from my computer and chant 2 or 3 rounds of japa. That's what pure devotion looks like. And in this process of bhakti, the journey is the goal. So by engaging in those activities, including whoever we meet, we're supporting them to come towards pure devotion. By engaging in the activities of pure devotion, that's the goal. And it takes us further and deeper to deeper realization, so that tomorrow and next week, when I got 15 minutes, I'm more inclined to read a verse from Bhagavad Gita or chant Hare Krishna than I was yesterday. And then next year, even more inclined. So it's a whole lifestyle. And we're encouraged to give 24 hours per day. But if we're ready to give 1 minute per day, that's wonderful too, wherever we're at. Thank you, Damayanti.
So the spiritual masters let you know what to do with your life.
Yeah.
What to do, what not to do.
Yeah.
And then you can just start where you're at and then just increase, as you go to the point where you become 100% pure.
Yep, that's it.
That's the program that God lays out. He sends spiritual masters with like instructions, and then if we're lucky, we get in contact with these instructions, and then we try it out, and if we want to go for it, we just increase.
It's a scientific process.
And then eventually we're purified.
Yep. Bhagavad Krishna says, for most of us, gradually, step by step. For most of us, it's not like one huge quantum jump. I mean, it could happen that way, but gradually, step by step, by disciplining ourselves, by being willing, by being willing to give ourselves to divine austerities. Austerity means giving up some immediate gratification for some longer term fulfillment. So say like I prefer to sleep till 9 or 10 a.m. But okay, get up at 4. It's an austerity. And by the time 6, 7, 8, 9 a.m. comes around, I'm really happy I did the austerity of getting up at 4 or 4:30 a.m. There's other things we could all be doing on a Sunday afternoon. There's other things we could be doing, right? We could be watching the Final Four or whatever's happening.
March Madness.
There, you got it. Oh, someone understands me. Okay, so yeah.
See, Final Four.
Yeah, there we go. Yeah, so there are many things we could be doing. What we're doing so much today. So we're here discussing Bhagavad Gita, and we're nourishing our eternal soul. So guidelines and then within those guidelines, then we get to make our choices. Love means there's no force. It means it's voluntary. Here's a process for awakening the ever-increasing bliss of the soul. And if there's force, then it's not spiritual. We get to choose to what extent we embrace the process. Thank you. So, okay. At the beginning of the program, Marie, who's now here online, Marie led us in chanting the names of the divine in the form of the Hare Krishna Mahamantra in a form called Kirtan or Bhaja. In the next part of our program, before a second Kirtan and then Prasad, Prasad means a sanctified, purified vegetarian feast. Then in the second part of our program, in the next part, we're going to experience, for those who would like to participate, we'll experience chanting the Hare Krishna Mahamantra in the form of japa. I have some japa beads to hand out for those who would like to participate. Hare Krishna Prema Lila. How you doing? Hare Krishna. Okay. So you've done this before, okay.
Yeah, once or twice.
Let's see here. You got that? Yeah. Yes, good. Okay. Anyone else need japa beads? Okay. So, Hare Krishna. All right then. So, the general process in chanting japa, it's a meditation, and it's a meditation on sound vibration. Yeah, it's a meditation on sound vibration.